Hello there, let's try this again. Okay, the pre-show got a little bit, well, wonky for lack of a better term, but now we seem to be online. Let's see if the tweet has gone out. And yep, there we go. We are now live on YouTube. Oh, and there we go. We've got one person, but let's pull up the chat. If my browser is willing to cooperate. I don't know why I keep enunciating my words like this. It's also really weird hearing my own voice echoing. Okay, there we go. That is one chat. And then we load up the Discord for the other chat. Adam makes it look easy. And there went the one viewer. Sad face. For those of you who are yet to join us, even though currently I don't see anyone watching, I'm just talking to fill the space. This is the pre-show for Geek News Reviews and Opinions. No doubt many of you are wondering why it's jumping channels. Well, that's currently because our usual host is on paternity leave, and so we are all taking turns hosting in his stead. Rather than try to wait until everyone's here, I figured, well, use the pre-show to let people filter in, as well as, well, honestly, I'm not quite sure. I'm not used to just talking into the empty void. I haven't done that since high school. I haven't done a lot of things since high school. Probably for good reason. So let's just pull this up here. Okay. Let's copy the URL. Refresh this page. Alright, so now we've sent it to the Discord, and the face you see is my ugly mug. Okie dokie, so we've got everything pulled up here and ready to go. Let's resize this, load up the stories. I don't know why it's adding it to that window, but let's go ahead and fix that. All right. If it seems kind of noisy in the background, it is because my younger sibling has just returned home. Both a blessing and a curse in our family is that we are cursed with really, really loud voices. Why am I talking softly? Well, given that I spend most of my day talking loudly, I tend to strain my vocal cords a bit, so I'm saving a majority of the louder speaking for when we begin the show proper. Hopefully it's not coming across on the microphone since, well, it is really close to my mouth. But you never know in this day and age. For all we know, YouTube could be bugging the entire room for all I know. So let's see here. Okay. Just popping my knuckles. So this must be what it is like before everyone shows up. The calm before the storm. Before everyone appears and either begins to shout, laugh, cry, or pray for the sweet release of Oblivion. Oblivion HD, so I'm referring to. Honestly, I'm not sure how that game would look in HD. I don't think the world really needs to know. That's not to say that Oblivion is a bad game, but like most Bethesda games, it has its problems. Alright. Let's see if I can find something here that can help fill the silence. I mean, if things get really boring, well, I've got various public domain novels I can read out loud to people. And it seems we have one viewer. Hello there. Alright, how do I... Oh, there we go. Yay, I'm not by myself anymore. I was going crazy.
Hi.
Yeah, it was getting to the point where I was tempted to just start reading Phantom of the Opera out loud for people.
You should. I mean, you're more than welcome to.
Yeah, but probably a bit early. Maybe closer in October, maybe.
All right, then.
Alright, so I basically decided to try to copy the pre-show thing, so we'll just wait for Alex to get in and wait for the crowd to appear, and speak of the devil, and he shall appear.
And here I am.
Alright, so that works out.
There we go. Webcam is much better now. Sorry.
Alright.
I was at a weird angle, so I was freaking out.
Yeah, I know the feeling. And my awkward early minutes by myself are now documented for posterity.
Wah, wah, wah.
Alright, although this isn't much of a pre-show, there was only one story that did not make the agenda for the solitary viewer who is watching the stream, whoever you are. We do appreciate the attention. Unfortunately, it was a story that didn't really have much to talk about, and that was the concept trailer for Chrono Break, the previously announced Chrono Trigger, well, not really announced, the sort of sequel to Chrono Trigger and Chrono Cross and Radical Dreamers. The only real official thing we saw in its capacity was that Square copyrighted the trademark and then did nothing with it, which is actually pretty common in the gaming industry. As for why it didn't make the cut, well, it's a concept fan trailer, so there's not much to say. I mean, it looks cool, and you can tell there's passion to it, but it's not like it's going to suddenly convince Square Enix to greenlight a Chrono sequel, as much as we would all like to see.
Probably not, but, you know, I guess if there's a shred of optimism out there, certainly we're with the, you know, of course, retro nostalgia boom we get with classic-styled games, like classic kind of platformers. Slim chance, maybe.
Maybe. But I know that people like, I believe it was either Yasunori Mitsuda, the composer, or even some of the scenario writers, they explained the main reason there hasn't really been a Chrono sequel is because of the office politics. Most of the people behind Chrono Trigger and Chrono Cross have since left Square Enix. And so it's very much, and even then, like the original Chrono Trigger, that was such a lightning in a bottle game where you had the people behind Dragon Quest and the people behind Final Fantasy coming together, and then Chrono Cross happened, which was only really a sequel, sort of, because they found a way to tie it in at the last minute. Honestly, though, Radical Dreamers is more of a direct sequel, though, but it's kind of sad that the creators kind of wrote off Radical Dreamers as opposed to Chrono Cross. Because at least Radical Dreamers, you actually get that direct connection with one of the characters being Magus from Chrono Trigger, but it doesn't help your sequel if you have to explain the connection via exposition dump with chibis.
That's true.
Yeah, that game was weird. That game just is weird in general.
It sounds weird.
Because it is. I mean, Radical Dreamers, it was an interesting concept, and the story itself is okay as for a text adventure. And then when they tried to repurpose it for Chrono Cross, it was like they wanted to make their own game, but then someone reminded them towards the end that, hey, you remember this is supposed to be a sequel, right? And they're like, well, crap. How are we going to tie these together? Chibis.
Yeah, that's how I feel about it. Feels like Star Fox Adventures, basically. Just an original product that got shoehorned to be in a sequel.
Yep. And the weird thing is, I was first exposed to Chrono Cross before Chrono Trigger. I didn't even realize they were connected. I thought, given how many things had Chrono in the name, I thought they were all connected because there was also the anime Chrono Crusade, which is definitely not related unless somehow they find some way to make it tangentially related, which I doubt.
I really can't see how they could.
Yep, but then again, no one can really see how Chrono Cross could, and they found a way, so... For all we know... I mean, given time travel, wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey stuff, they could probably find a way to tie it in via multiverse theory somehow, but then they'd run into issues of, oh, this sort of related thing has nothing to do with time travel and with demons and monsters. Well, actually, that would make it feel right at home now that I think about it.
Yeah. Okay, try this on for size. Rosette's timepiece contains a shard of Shala's pendant. There, that's how you connect it.
Yeah, we've got the makings of one of the many multiverse theories. We'll just put it right up there next to the Tommy Westphal shared universe.
Oh my gosh.
Yes, for those who don't know, that's a reference to the ending of Saint Elsewhere, where it's revealed the show existed in the mind of one of the characters the entire time. Which raised the questions of, oh, it crossed over with Homicide: Life on the Street, Law and Order, and all these other shows, meaning that this one guy has an entire multiverse inside his head. Yeah, that's grossly oversimplifying it. And people who are curious, I definitely recommend doing a deep dive, because it's fascinating the way some of the shows tie together, because it connects St. Elsewhere. It's basically like the 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon, except you can connect Law and Order to Sesame Street. All right, so now that we're coming on time, let's go ahead and get this ball rolling. Sound speed.
Rolling.
All right. Audio-visual sync for the podcast in 3, 2, 1. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Geek News Reviews and Opinions for Friday, August 31st, 2018. I'm your host, Stephen Romney, filling in for Adam Mickelson, who is currently waging battle on Diaper Hill. But I am not alone, as you can hear from the chuckles and the stifled guffaws from my two compatriots. I am joined by a panel of fellow YouTubers, fellow geeks, fellow all-around great people. And starting with one of our regulars, we have coming out of the shadows and the warm, loving embrace of his Princess Principal posters, because unlike Adam, I actually remembered when he pointed out what they were from. Alex Shadowblazer Short. How are you doing tonight?
They're pretty good. It's been another crazy, hectic week, but next week is my 30th birthday. I can't believe I'm 30 now. And, well, to celebrate, I'm going to take a few days off work and just chill. Maybe do a little cleaning. Maybe try and watch an anime that I'm behind on. Either way, gonna just enjoy the next week coming ahead.
Indeed, and you deserve it, because retail is hell.
Quite.
Yes, and also joining us tonight is another regular and friend of the podcast, Brinton Pyle-Volley. How are you doing tonight?
I feel like I think I'm getting sick, but it's okay.
Oh, no.
Well, I mean, we are leaving summer and approaching fall, so the temperatures are starting to drop, so the fact that sickness is going around is actually not that surprising.
No, it's not. My foster son's been like half and half all week, and my husband hasn't been feeling well either, so for the most part, I was like, hey, I haven't gotten sick yet. Woke up this morning. Well, shit.
Yep. That's usually the way it goes. You can always trust children to keep you up to date on all the viruses of the day.
That's true.
All right. And it's good that we start with a little bit of levity like that, as unfortunately, in addition to hosting this week, I drew the short straw and got a whole bunch of really downer news stories this week, unfortunately.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yes. And it would be remiss of us to start the podcast without acknowledging what is probably one of the most requested as we go into tonight's top story. As many of you may recall that earlier this week, there was a Madden tournament over in Jacksonville. Let me confirm the state because there are several cities. Okay, so Jacksonville, Florida. And unfortunately, this shooting occurred at a tournament for Madden. I don't know which year, but it was at a Madden tournament where one of the competitors who had since lost the tournament, looking at the name of the suspect, a David Katz from Baltimore, opened fire on the large crowd that had gathered to watch the tournament. According to the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office, looking at the official statement from Sheriff Mike Williams as posted to their Facebook page, if the website will load and cooperate with me. Looking at the details, there are multiple fatalities reported at the time of the article that we are referring to, which is from IGN and also referring to a story from the LA Times. At the time of writing, the shooter, David Katz, fired at least a dozen shots into the crowd, leaving at least 3 dead and a number of other people wounded. The number was in flux for a while since you had people who were taken in at the scene, as well as people who had checked themselves into the hospital after the incident occurred. And looking at the details of the tournament, this was in the final rounds of the Madden Classic in Las Vegas. Or actually, no, it was actually the semifinals where the finalists would proceed to the Madden Classic in Las Vegas. I really should be more careful with how I read these stories. And David Katz, who was operating under the handle Bread, had traveled from Baltimore to compete in the Jacksonville tournament, only to be eliminated very early on, which no doubt is what triggered his violent outburst. And so looking here, it looks, according to the LA Times, he was a gamer who had competed in the tournament and lost, and appeared to have targeted a few people, shooting at least 5 victims before turning the gun on himself. Naturally, this was a very tragic occurrence, and speaking personally, my heart goes out to the families of the victims, both the deceased and those who managed to survive. But honestly, there's not as much else to really say about the event itself, so I'll go ahead and turn it over to the panel. Do either of you guys have any thoughts about the incident, about the suspect, or about what has happened since then?
I actually would like to start. So, well, one, I guess this is me trying to make light of the situation, even though I'm not making fun of the people who died or the fact that there was another shooting. I just kind of found it funny that it was at a video game tournament for Madden. And oh man, I shouldn't laugh because it's not funny. No, overall, one of the first things that came to my mind is that, and I mean, you guys are free and welcome, and even in chat, all of you are free and welcome to completely disagree with me, because my husband disagreed with me when I said this, but I feel like this is going to bring up the argument that video games causes violence. Because the first thing that came to mind when I read this early in the week is Columbine, and how those 2 teenage boys were playing a lot of violent video games, which then led them to go shoot up their school. I understand that Madden isn't really the type of game that incites a whole lot of violence, but I still feel like to some extent, if it hasn't already been said, that people are going to start saying, well, video games causes violence. This guy got super, super mad because he didn't do well in the tournament and got kicked out, eliminated early, and then he just went and just shot up a bunch of people. Yeah, that's pretty much what I wanted to say. I feel like that specific statement or pseudo argument could be brought up sometime fairly soon, and then the whole question of do video games really actually cause violence could be stirred up again into the public, etc.
Yeah, and especially when you consider people are going to gloss over the fact when they bring up those arguments that the suspect themselves, David Katz, according again to the same LA Times story, reports that he had a history of mental illness prior to the tournament in question, and had actually been hospitalized because of it as well. So That's another factor a lot of people tend to overlook when they try to demonize gaming, is that they tend to forget the other factors that contribute to shootings such as these, such as whether the person has a history of depression or a history of violent, aggressive behavior. And that's another important factor here, especially since a lot of people try to debate whether video games cause people to become more aggressive. It's not something that can really be answered by saying yes or no. There are a lot of factors to consider, such as the home life that the person grows up in, what sort of stimuli, whether or not they've been taught proper coping mechanisms for their anger, which sadly is something that is severely lacking in a lot of places. And looking here, it seems to be another case where it's someone who may not have been taught the proper coping mechanisms, decided to resort to violence after losing the tournament very early on. Alex, do you have any thoughts regarding the shooting at the tournament?
Like Brenton said, certainly my thoughts first sprung to mind is like, this is a video game tournament, so naturally you're going to get the usual suspects out the windwork to rah 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 shake their fists at video games and say it's video games that are causing the violence. And sometimes it's pretty clear to see where those motivations lie, and because sometimes it is from, well, the gun lobby, especially when gun control keeps getting mentioned, which is what inevitably also happens after a tragedy like this. And unfortunately that is a case. It's like, it is the cases of mental illness and gun control, and that debate is gonna just rage on and rage on and rage on. Right. I think overall, where it applies to us in just the fandom sense, skewing away from the politics for a minute, is, of course, it certainly makes us all really kind of step back and think, do I want to go to this event? Do I want to go to this tournament? Do I want to go to this convention? Do I want to go to this concert?
Mm-hmm.
It's getting, I mean, I know sometimes that thought goes through my mind whenever I want to go to a big public event. It's like, is there going to be some crazy person coming to shoot up the place? But of course, we've talked about this before. These thoughts go through our minds, but ultimately we have to just kind of hope for the best, be mindful of our surroundings, go and enjoy ourselves. We can't live in fear. We can't worry that everywhere there's going to be some lone predator, and like what happened here. And we just got to hope that things will turn out good. I mean, I went to Salt Lake Gamescom a couple months ago and had a great time. Nothing bad happened. Nothing scary happened. So just take that as a message from me. When you hear these stories, it can be pretty scary and intimidating, especially when you want to go out to big gatherings like these. But just remember, these things seem like they're common, but they are pretty rare.
Indeed, especially with our 24-hour news cycle, it can be very easy to believe that the world is falling apart, since sometimes it seems very much so like it is. Again, it makes me long for the days when we had nice, calm Mr. Rogers to set us straight.
But I mean, that's the thing. I feel like that's pretty much just how news is in general. I just want a day where everybody focuses on something that is positive, like literally for at least 24 hours, because that's pretty much what we're getting all the time. Is just like this horrible thing's happening, and then the president of the United States is doing this now, and this horrible thing is happening in the Middle East, and this country is getting bombed. It's just like one terrible thing after another. And it's kind of, I'm even going to second what Alex said. You can't live your life in fear. I still go out and do things, as much as I can when time and funds permit it, and when the will to go out of my house permits it. And that's just because I don't want to miss out on being able to experience my life, because I decide to hide behind closed doors. And another thing that kind of like randomly popped into my mind, and I'm just going to say it, is that I feel like a lot of these shootings that do happen, I feel like a lot of them happen on the East Coast. Like I don't know. A lot of the shootings that I've heard of recently have all been taking place in like the Southeast, where being like a gun owner is something to be very proud of.
Yeah, and especially this is the second shooting we've had in Florida this year alone. That's another thing. Because this was in Jacksonville, Florida, and then we had the shooting in Parkland, so Florida can't seem to catch a break this year.
Well, I mean, weird shit happens in Florida all the time, so I think they're just cursed.
That's why we have the common headline, Florida man does X. And it's usually followed by something abnormal and bizarre.
Well, yes, and that's mainly just because of the way crime reporting in Florida is handled, where reporters can get access to the police reports before they're finalized, and so that's why a lot more Florida news stories tend to make their way out, because they don't have to go through as much red tape. But to kind of get back on point, it is a tragic incident, and there's a quote from a popular streamer that I think kind of summarizes what Brinton was trying to say earlier. And this comes from a streamer, this comes from a streamer by the name of Ninja. I don't know his real name, but this streamer in his tweet said, "My heart goes out to the family, friends, and people affected by the Madden shooting today. Evil times we live in, just need to outshine that evil with positivity." Which, honestly, I think that's the best we can all do at this point. It's a tragic incident, and people are going to be pointing blame every which way. But honestly, there's only so much we can really do. But like we've all said, you can't spend all your life living in fear. And as we've always said, you just have to be mindful and be vigilant. And very much, if you see something, say something.
And so, by not following what Romney said, it is now time to move on to the next sorrowful.
Yes, this has been a very somber week in the geeky news cycle, as we go from one tragic incident of death, which is very horrifying, to another that equally as horrifying, but is hard to feel as much sympathy for one of the people involved. But that is just my opinion, but that is also just from the opinion of someone who isn't as familiar with the content. As in our next story, reporting from Time Magazine, a YouTuber by the name of McSkillet was killed earlier in this week on the 20th. I believe this was actually last week when this occurred. The YouTuber, real name Trevor Heitman, his handle being McSkillet, was killed in a wrong-way car crash on the San Diego highway that also killed a mother and her 12-year-old daughter, according to the official statement from the San Diego Fire and Rescue Department. This was also reported by the California Highway Patrol and occurred on last Thursday at around 4:30 p.m. Pacific time, when the YouTuber McSkillet smashed his 2015 McLaren 650S head-on into a 2010 Hyundai, with the vehicle that Heitman was driving traveling at almost 100 miles per hour as he drove south on a northbound carpool lane on the I-805 highway. All three were dead at the scene, and according to the San Diego Medical Examiner, Heitman, the YouTuber in question, was killed due to blunt force trauma from the crash. And apparently this took place at least 30 minutes after he had crashed his sports car into a gate at the Ashley Falls Elementary School. And then after crashing through said gate, he exited his car and smashed the window at said school. So it may be in poor taste, but you can see why I may not have as much sympathy for this particular individual. Again, it is still tragic, because all death is tragic. That is not in contention here. But given what was occurring, it's likely that at least according to this news story, we don't have the full details, but no one drives down the wrong way at 100 miles per hour on accident. Like, not usually, especially on a highway, at least from my own driving experience. So let's go ahead and open this up to the panel. Either of you, any thoughts on the death of McSkillet through this car accident?
This is a really peculiar story because, yeah, as you said, generally you don't see a person screaming down the freeway 100 miles per hour in the wrong lane. You know, wrong way drivers happen, but usually when they happen, they're under the influence of some kind, which I don't believe is what we know, at least as of now. In this case, we don't know if he's under the influence of anything, do we?
According to the article, nothing has been released, and that's likely still being trying to be determined by the San Diego Medical Examiner. So, for all we know, especially given the nature of the crash, it could affect the way the body looks after death, which could make it difficult to determine if someone was under the influence. Like, I know there are certain ways by testing the various fluids, but it can be kind of tricky without having an actual brain to be able to test to see if that was a factor or not. Given that he earlier crashed the said car into the gate of an elementary school, it's probably safe to say that there was some sort of influence involved, whether it was alcohol or some sort of illicit substance.
Sorry, I was chewing a fry. Well, to be completely honest, I didn't really know who Miss Skillet was. I actually had to take a look at his YouTube channel just to see what kind of content he makes, kind of become acquainted with the YouTuber in general. Because if you were to tell me like Chugga Conroy passed away, I think I would have like a little bit more to like say and have a little bit like, no, I would definitely be sorrowful and sad. But seeing as I didn't really know who this person was, and frankly, like the type of content that he produced isn't something that I'm particularly interested in, hence why I didn't really know who he was up until then. So the most I can say about this in terms of giving an opinion is that, yes, it is very sad. As much as I didn't know who this YouTuber was nor care for the content that he created, I going out the way that he did is pretty crappy. I personally hope that when it's time for my life to come to an end, that it's like in my sleep or like comfortably in like my home. And being somebody who is not like a huge fan of motor vehicles, like driving, being driven, just like anything that has to do with a car in general, like that literally is my worst nightmare. And just like thinking about it and just like the thoughts that could be running through your mind as you see very quickly this car coming and just like smashing right in front of you. That just horrifies me. I've been in like some very minor accidents, and those still are not even super entertaining or fun. They're just scary. So I definitely feel bad. And we have to remember that it's not just this YouTuber who passed away. It's also like other members of his family that were with him in the car. So there are there are grieving relatives and other like members of this family who now have lost 3 people that were very dear to them.
Well, looking at it, it doesn't appear that the mother and daughter that were killed in the crash, they don't appear to actually be related to McSkillet. It appears that they were the people driving the vehicle that McSkillet crashed into, according to the other articles that I'm finding both on CNN and their local affiliate, KUSI.
Oh, for some reason I understood that like the mother and daughter were in the car with McSkillet and it was like his mom. But anyway, like I guess I can kind of like backpedal and take back what I just said. Still, like, there's a mother, there are parents, there are like siblings, there are aunts, uncles, grandparents, if they're even still alive, who are now grieving for this, this young life that has now just died. And I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of mystery surrounding what's going on here. It will be interesting to see if there is like some sort of update, or if somebody decides to give like a idea of what could have possibly happened once more information has been compiled and released, if that actually happens. So I guess it's kind of a waiting game for anybody who's truly interested in what could have possibly happened. But the most I can say is, it's super unfortunate. I would never want to go out the way that he did. Like, I can't even begin to imagine like the final thoughts that ran through his head. So, may he rest in peace.
Yes, and indeed, the one thing that worries me with how the story's been reported is how a lot of articles are choosing to focus on the fact that he was a YouTuber. We mentioned earlier how people kind of tried to demonize video games in relation to violent tragedies. It kind of worries me how, given that both the Time article and the CNN article that are going about this are kind of trying to paint it as, oh, it's a YouTuber who crashed his car. It's kind of a case of, really, did you need to kind of make this level of demonization to kind of to focus on that fact? Now, granted, probably was the only claim of fame, the only way they could make the story relevant to anybody reading it, but at the same time, it kind of creates that tone of, okay, are they kind of specifically being antagonistic? It's hard to say, but given the media's history of trying to demonize YouTubers, it's not that surprising.
Yeah, especially with a pretty serious accident like this, where the circumstances are pretty suspicious. Like we said, driving down the freeway 100 miles per hour in the wrong way. We'll have to kind of see how is the media really going to spin this if it beyond just, okay, he was a pretty well-known YouTuber and that's his claim to fame, and that's why they're kind of reporting on it that way.
I feel I like taking what both you and Romney have said. I feel like the only reason why that's kind of like a major focus is because in the past like year or two, just how certain YouTubers have put themselves in the spotlight due to racism or other like inappropriate behavior on the internet. I don't think that they would be focusing. Well, honestly, I don't think this would even be a topic of conversation if none of that stuff even happened. Because at that point, it's like, oh, like, like this wouldn't be national news. It would just be local. This car crash here, 3 people dead, but because they were able to identify that he, this is who this person is, and his claim to fame is being a YouTube star, that's just getting put under the limelight more than it should be. Like, that's my honest opinion.
Indeed. Unfortunately, there's not too much to really add to this. I mean, of course, my thoughts and prayers do go out to the family of the mother and daughter who unfortunately lost their lives as a result of this crash, because that, like Brenton has said, is a very, very sad way to have someone's life come to an end, especially someone as young as 12. And so there's not much else we can really say. Just another unfortunate incident here for us to discuss this week. I don't know about you, but let's move on to a happier topic, if possible, in preparation for the coming storm later tonight. Now, it may be a small comfort given how much of a bummer week this has been, but fans of Onimusha rejoice. Capcom has announced that they are remastering the very first game, Onimusha Warlords, for PlayStation 4, Xbox One, PC, and Nintendo Switch. The 2001 PlayStation 2 game will be re-released on these consoles on January 15th, 2019. Now, for those of you who've never played Onimusha, here is the simplest way to describe it. It's basically Resident Evil, but take out zombies and replace demons and set it during the Warring States period of Japan's history. And that's basically Onimusha in a nutshell. It had the same fixed camera angles, it had the same sort of tank controls, and that was literally even the premise when they were making it at Capcom, was basically Resident Evil, but with ninjas. And so looking here, and I only speak from mild experience, given that I've only played a little bit of the original Onimusha, but it gave me nightmares as a kid, so I didn't play it for very long. But looking at the new features, going off of both the IGN article and the posting from the Capcom Unity blog, there are a few new features that will be added with this remaster. Obviously, there are the high-definition graphics, which is always something to look forward to with the remaster. There will also be widescreen support, which many gamers today may not realize was a thing that had to be programmed because we all used to have the giant blocky 4x3 televisions. There will also be a screen scroll feature that basically will allow for the widescreen display to kind of scroll up and down according to the player movements, since there are certain areas that couldn't be fully displayed from certain positions. The game will also feature analog stick support because, again, given that it was modeled after Resident Evil, it had the tank controls, so now you'll be able to use your analog stick. And you'll also be able to access easy mode from the very beginning because, as many of you may remember, in the original release of the game, it didn't have an easy mode, at least not one that was immediately available, so given the difficulty curve, that's a bit of a nice touch. And on top of that, there will also be a new soundtrack for the game, so new musical score and new re-recorded voices for the new release of Onimusha Warlords. So, Brenton, Alex, are either of you Onimusha fans? And if so, what are your thoughts on this remaster from Capcom?
Well, I've never played Onimusha myself. I do think this is really impressive. I'm pretty certain, I know Drac is definitely a fan, and I think he's been making a push for us to do it on Drac and Shadow, so this is a pretty good incentive for us to do that with this new remaster coming out.
This
I'm
would be a
pretty
good incentive to have Draken Shadow featuring Brenton, because Resident Evil with ninjas sounds hella awesome.
yeah.
Well, it's just as an like just like listening to everything that we, and I apologize for interrupting, Alex. Um, just everything that Romney, that you were saying about the remaster. This is a very impressive remaster. Like, I feel like it's just a complete and total rework at this point.
Indeed. I mean, especially since they're going the extra mile of even re-recording the dialogue. Now, it states that they're going to be re-recording the Japanese dialogue, so we don't know if it's going to be the same case where we're going to be getting the English dub that was recorded for the original release, or if it's going to be Japanese only, like we've been seeing with certain other game franchises. But honestly, of all the franchises, given that we've got the Resident Evil 2 remake, this could be Capcom testing the waters to see if maybe there's a way to revive the Onimusha franchise, given that the last game in the series didn't get the greatest reception, at least from what I've understood.
Yeah, and they're of course on their remake kicks right now because we got the Resident Evil remake, and I know this is a remaster, but still, I think Capcom kind of going back to the old well, maybe testing out some old franchises of theirs, ones that maybe they've sat on the wayside for quite a while, giving them a real good chance to come back out and see if they can tap into a new audience.
Indeed, and especially given the climate that exists now, because back when Onimusha came out, there wasn't as much of an interest in Japanese culture as it was back then. This kind of came out during the, I guess, kind of the height of the Toonami era. But even then, a lot of the shows we saw on Toonami didn't really deal with the Warring States period. This was something Capcom even struggled with their Dynasty Warriors clone, Sengoku Basara, which the first game was released here stateside under Devil Kings and massively reworked the plot and the geography to try to give it a tie-in to Devil May Cry of all franchises. Granted, not the most outlandish tie, especially given that one of the characters is literally voiced by Ruben Langdon, but still, definitely an interesting choice. And so there's probably more of an audience for something like Onimusha now than there was back when the games were initially released, even though it was still successful enough that it had 3 full games, one of which actually had, what was the actor's name? I think his name was Jean Reno, I think was the actor they got for Onimusha 3, the French actor. I could be wrong. It was someone well-known to the internet. Because that was like a big draw, was basically, oh, they got this very well-known French actor to be in Onimusha 3. Let's see. It's taking a little bit. We're doing it live, people. Okay, so looking here. Yes, bear with us. The internet does not seem to want to cooperate.
I don't think we made our proper no-goat sacrifices tonight.
Indeed. Okay, so yeah, it is Jean Reno, was the actor who played the character of Jacques Blanc. Very generic name, but, well, that's video games for you.
That's hella generic.
Yes.
Like, I'm almost like shook and offended by how generic it is.
Yes, but keep in mind that this is Capcom. I mean, when you consider the types of characters they've made for, well, all of their games, especially games like Resident Evil, I mean, when you consider that they were going to have a character based on Eddie Murphy in the original Resident Evil, it's pretty telling.
I shouldn't. That would have been interesting. I know I shouldn't be like totally shocked, but however, I somehow still am. But well, anyway, continue.
I mean, if you want to see what that character looks like, well, Dino Crisis, that's where that character ended up. They didn't use it in Resident Evil, so they used it in Dino Crisis, which basically is Resident Evil with dinosaurs.
Dino Crisis. Images. Oh my gosh, are you kidding me? I just saw exactly who you're talking about. I just can't even right now.
Yep. So who knows?
I want to play this game.
Well, I mean, it's available on the PlayStation Network. That's where I found it. I started it, yet to finish it. But as for Onimusha itself, I'm definitely curious. I wouldn't say excited, but curious, because I do have a PS1 copy of Onimusha Warlords that I started, but have yet to go through. It was one of the things I tried to do as a review for Halloween before, well, reasons. But At least this is a nice sign that Capcom is willing to go back to some older franchises, as a lot of people have also been clamoring for a return to things like Dino Crisis and some of the other lesser-known franchises. So, for all we know, we could see an Onimusha game using the Resident Evil engine. Who knows? It would probably be, well, it probably would be strange, but I can see it. Given the way that engine works, and given how terrifying the demons and monsters are supposed to be in Onimusha, using the RE engine probably wouldn't be that much of a stretch.
I mean, why not?
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah.
I mean, makes about as much sense as using it for Devil May Cry.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, I still can't get past the photorealistic models. I mean, it just looks weird. I mean, Nero looks okay, but everyone else that is not voiced by a Power Rangers actor seems weird. Yeah,
sorry, I'm like super distracted by Dino Crisis right now. This looks, I want to like, I don't know. This game has me like frightened and intrigued and curious all at once.
That's pretty much how I was feeling after I got done with my visit to the dinosaur park, was that I had dinosaurs on the brain, so I know where you're coming from. And speaking of things that are terrifying and also intriguing, that brings us to the first story of the entertainment portion, and we are burning through these stories, but unfortunately, we're going to have to take another left turn down Downer Avenue. As many people were very, very quick to notify us during the week, well, many people may have heard of this little streaming service called Crunchyroll and its parent company, Elation Incorporated. Elation decided to announce that they were opening a new studio called Elation Studios and decided that they were going to begin production on a show as part of the Crunchyroll Originals brand. And people did not take kindly to the product that was announced, as they had dropped a trailer, if you can call it that, for their first Crunchyroll original, High Guardian Spice. Now, the articles themselves we're going off of, although I'm not particularly a fan of the periodical One Angry Gamer, it is so far the only comprehensive account we have for the story we are reporting, because as soon as the trailer for High Guardian Spice dropped, people lost their minds. Now, I'm going to hold off on my own thoughts, but to give the very, very basic premise, High Guardian Spice is an animated series coming from Elation Studios, set in a high fantasy setting about 4 girls who are training to become guardians. Now, that is as simple as I can get it, because that is basically all the trailer tells you. And note that it says, tells you, not shows you, as the trailer itself wasn't so much about the show itself as more or less highlighting the production crew and production staff behind the show, while only showing us a few stills of concept art. Now, people were incredibly divided about whether or not Crunchyroll was going in the right direction, leading to a lot of toxic discourse back and forth, both in the comments of the video itself, which have since been disabled, and in the forums of Crunchyroll's website discussing the trailer. It was not pretty, to say the least. Now, looking at the article, that's the various articles from One Angry Gamer that have compiled this, they've disabled comments and the like-dislike counter for the video on YouTube itself. Crunchyroll forum moderators have shut down the various forum threads discussing whether or not the show was becoming too political, or whether Crunchyroll as a platform was also becoming political. And there have also been periodicals like comicbook.com claiming that there are people rallying in support, despite evidence to the contrary. Now, I'll hold off on my thoughts on the actual trailer itself. Brenton, Alex, have you seen the trailer? And if so, what are your thoughts on Crunchyroll's decision to go into original programming? And do you feel they're going about this the right way?
I did see the quote-unquote trailer, that because it really isn't a trailer. It's more of a production pitch with a lot of still art. I mean, that's animation for you. Sometimes all you're going to get is that early concept trailer, which kind of begs the question, why show anything at all if you're still that early in the conceptual process, especially when animation goes. I mean, even anime generally, even if an anime is going to produce a sort of separate trailer, at least they have the decency to animate it. This was just, rough. This was just like concept art, storyboards, and of course, just the staff explaining what the show is to me. the premise does have me intrigued. It sounds like the kind of show I would go after if it was, if it was kind of your general anime out of Japan. I know this is out of San Francisco, and it's got the whole anime aesthetic to it. Like when we saw the anime aesthetic boom back in the mid 2000s with like Avatar, The Last Airbender, and other shows that followed in its wake. That said, I kind of see where a lot of the rants are coming from, because the trailer really is just touting we're an incredibly diverse and wonderful staff here making this show for diverse people, for diversity. So it's a word that we've had shoved down our throats for the last 4 to 5 to 6 years since Gamergate became a thing. Maybe a little bit before that, I don't know. But it's just getting a little bit annoying, and it is starting to just become like, oh, you're just making this for diversity's sake. You're not focused on making an intriguing show. You're not making a good show. You're just touting that you're touting your diversity to score political points among the Twitter mobs out there, so that they won't lynch you on Monday. And that's where I think this really falters to me, is because you're not convincing me that this is going to be a good show. You're convincing me that you're making this for the Twitter audiences out there, for the people who are ready to tweet at you angrily if you don't do something exactly the way they want it to do. I know fandoms can be like that, but in this case, I'm talking like in the more political sphere of things. And so for that, I'm on the fence. I kind of want to see at least one episode, see what the actual writing is like, see what the animation is like. I'm guessing it's just going to be that limited flash kind of style that we kind of get with most American cartoons. Crunchyroll kind of being the sponsorship. I don't think this is what anybody had in mind when they heard Crunchyroll was going to start delving into original programming. I think we were all hoping that Crunchyroll was going to really partner with some Japanese companies, because the whole point of Crunchyroll is to, give your services more directly to the Japanese than you ever could before. And I believe there are some shows in the Crunchyroll catalog right now that have been kind of co-sponsored. I don't know, because it's like they're not listed as any capacity in official production committees, so I don't know how much they have to do with those. I see stuff that's like called a Crunchyroll programming thing.
Yeah, so far the only one I know for sure that they were part of the production committee, I think, was the show Kinzyver. I think was one of the major ones. I think that was one of the first ones Crunchyroll was actually on the planning committee for. But even then, with planning committees in Japan, they usually have a bunch of different entities representing a bunch of different interests. So although them being on the committee is a big step, well, we don't know how much of a say they actually had in the adaptation. Brinton, what are your thoughts on the High Guardian Spice controversy? Are your thoughts on the show and how this whole thing has kind of spiraled out of control?
Well, I kind of like that Alex went first, because him having seen the trailer, and by the way, your thoughts were just beautifully beautifully articulated. That's the word I was searching for. No, you're welcome. I did not see the trailer. I didn't get a chance to watch it. So I'm glad that you guys both you and Alex gave a very detailed synopsis of what happened, because it was able to paint a picture into my mind, so that way I could formulate a stronger opinion. But the fact that a trailer was presented in a production pitch-like manner is actually rather disappointing, especially since they are, if I've understood correctly, this is supposed to be like the first original show that they're trying to get out there. And so it's just disappointing that that's how they wanted to present their first original, especially since it clearly states in the art, on the trailer, that it's going to be coming out in 2019, and that's just right around the corner, whether or not we want to believe that, because we're coming to the end of the third court third quarter of the year, and then like the holidays are just going to go like that, and before we know it, it's going to be 2019. So if that's all they really have to show us right now, that worries me, because just based alone from the stills that I was looking at on these articles, like I like the art design. I think it looks very like colorful and cute, and much like Alex, I wouldn't mind giving the show, like watching at least one episode and like giving it a chance before I decide whether or not I want to commit to watching an entire season or commit to actually watching the entire like series, as long as it's in production. I and then so yeah, that's that's just something that came to mind to me while Alex was talking. And then I kind of feel that I completely like I'm completely okay and completely understand why they would shut down Threads for it becoming political, because even on the One Angry Gamer articles, like I was just reading through the comments, and a lot of them were also very politically charged as well. And I find it kind of funny and maybe even almost silly that all of this has gone just virally political so quickly in a matter of a couple of in the course of a week. And I can see why it did that, just based on what you two have already previously said. It's just crazy at how just toxic this has all been, or what it sounds like during the course of the entire week. And so it's just really, I just see this more as a disappointment for Crunchyroll and Elation, because having an original on a streaming service is kind of like the big deal right now. I mean, look at Netflix. I feel like a new original movie or a new original TV show comes out almost like every other week, especially this year. Oh my gosh, I can't even keep up. Like, I can't believe. Actually, no, I haven't been keeping up with it at all. But it's like, it's a big deal to be able to like have your own original, because people stream more than they actually sit down and watch their cable service that they get through their provider. And it's just, I hate that I keep using the word disappointed, but it is disappointing, because I think the show looks cute, and I wish that we had something a little bit more concrete.
Yes, and the concrete thing, to get into my thoughts now, to kind of put the whole SJW arguments aside, honestly, I think the main problem, and it's both in the trailer, for lack of a better term, and in the initial press release, it basically was them talking about, as Alex said, diversity for diversity's sake. It's like, oh, we have a very diverse writer's room, a very diverse crew, but it's very much a case. I was going to say, oh, they pulled a Square Enix, but Square Enix at least makes sure they have something to show when they make an announcement, even if it's just a concept trailer. Whereas here, they basically did worse than Square Enix, where they decided to announce something, but then spend pretty much almost the entire video and half of the written press release describing the crew and how diverse it is and how super progressive they're being, but not actually showing what we can expect, not actually showing what the product will look like. I mean, yeah, concept art is okay and all, but not enough to devote a trailer video to. And looking at just terms of the business strategy, honestly, I think the main mistake was Elation trying to do this through Crunchyroll. Now, I know it seems weird but Crunchyroll's the company. Yeah, but Elation Studios is owned by the company that owns Crunchyroll, Elation. And Elation has another streaming service that isn't anime-centric, but is actually more focused on, well, obscure animations, both Western and Eastern, called Verve. And that was my first question is, why are they announcing this on Crunchyroll? Why aren't they debuting this on Verve? Which would probably be a much better, much more appropriate place to debut a show in this style. Because one of the things that I understand from the comments is that people subscribe to Crunchyroll for the anime. They're not subscribing for Western shows. And that's kind of what Verve was there for, since they have arrangements with Rooster Teeth, with Channel Frederator, and Mondo Media, which distribute Western animation. And so that was my first question of, they should have tried distributing this to Verve instead of Crunchyroll. And again, it goes back to the main issue. They should have at least had more of a trailer to show, rather than basically taking the trailer to pat themselves on the back for how super diverse they are, guys. And looking at this, I think that's the main problem here. It kind of has both this sense of, it's almost kind of got this inflated sense of self-importance that they think the diversity itself is going to be enough to carry the show, but it isn't. It really isn't. I mean, when I was at a panel at Comic-Con FanX a few years ago, I was at a Highlander panel, and Adrian Paul kind of mentioned how, yeah, diversity is well and good, but if it doesn't actually contribute to the story, if it doesn't actually make the end product better, don't force a square peg into a round hole. And so, for all we know, the show could end up being really good. It could be something akin to Steven Universe or Adventure Time, or for all we know, this could be some sort of Madoka Magica false flag operation where it'll suddenly become nightmare fuel. But the problem is, all we have is concept art and nothing else. And I think that's more the reason why people are upset. Yeah, there's this trend in animation. We dealt with this during the Thundercats Roar debacle. But honestly, Elation kind of dropped the ball in announcing this. They really should have waited until they had something more to show. Like, if they even if it was just like a simple animated trailer, just something more. Because honestly, it very much is a very huge marketing misstep across the ball. Not getting into the politics of it, it's a simple case of they could have announced this better, probably gone for something a bit more low-key, rather than pulling an EA and basically using a trailer to be a field trip to Skywalker Ranch. Because that was the vibe I got from this. It was like when EA said, oh, we sent our designers and artists to Skywalker Ranch. And it's like, are you going to be showing anything of the actual game? No? Okay, I guess this was just a very expensive slideshow of your field trip to Skywalker Ranch. That's what this felt like.
Yeah, like you're completely right. They totally pulled an EA on this one.
Yeah, and as for whether I'll check it out personally, I'm kind of in the same boat as you guys. I'm going to withhold judgment until the show actually comes out, or at least until we see what the show itself will look like. And not just concept art, but like in motion. What are these characters going to look like moving? Is it going to be the simple Flash style? Or are they going to actually have some nice in-betweens? Is it going to have the same polish as something like Castlevania, which probably not the best example, but at least Castlevania didn't resort to Flash. They at least had some in-betweens. It just didn't help. Some of them were drawn on 4s. For those of you who don't know, that is animation terminology, which I'll explain in probably the long glossary I will have to write for this episode. All right.
I'll be looking forward to it.
Yeah,
Yes.
Honestly, I think if I had like any closing statements to what has already been discussed, I think adding this to Verve would be a fantastic idea because there's already so many great productions on Verve. My husband and I use it a lot, or watch a lot of shows on that, particularly because we like watching Carmen Quest, which is just absolutely hilarious and really makes me want to get like super famous enough to be considered like worthy to play D&D with Matt Harmon, which would just be absolutely entertaining and so much fun. But that's besides the point. I think this would be a fantastic show for Verve, like 100%. And lastly, yeah, I just like the concept art's great. Like I said, I think like I like the art style. I think it's cute and very colorful, which like attracts me to the show. But I want to see like personality in these characters. I want to see movement. I want to see talking. I want to see like, you know, what this story could actually be about. What you said, Romney, like that, like, you know, thank you for giving us an idea of what the story is. But obviously it's kind of like what you said. It's like, it's not enough. Like, you know, a guardian of what? Like, you know, what's the bigger threat going on here? This high fantasy world, like it's all very vague and very loose, and it feels very much like what E3 generally presents. So I like this comparison. So
well, yeah, because that definitely raises the question of like, what is a guardian? What are the threats? I mean, because guardian is a very nebulous term in a lot of way. I mean, we hear it in so much fantasy. Like, is it like, okay, is it a guardian? Are they knights? Are they police officers? Do they turn into owls and fight in the sky? Who knows?
Well, I mean, based on just like the thumbnail of the video, it looks like a combination of like between these four girls, a combination of like magic wielding or just like up in your face melee, like rough fighting. So it kind of like begs to it begs to ask the question, what is a guardian, and then are there different types of guardians? Are all guardians just like the same across the board?
Yeah, or is it the case of, is it a tiered system? And that's why I kind of use the example of, are they police officers? Do they have to go to an academy and then become certified? Is there some sort of guardian guild or order they have to report to? Or are they like the Jedi, for example? Is it a monastic order, or is it a secular order? There's just so much we don't actually know about at this point. And even it's also a case of what we're not even sure of the genre. Is it going to be strictly high fantasy? Is it going to be like a magical girl genre like other shows like Ray Earth? Is it going to be purely comedy? Is it going to be dramatic? Honestly, and given the artwork, it's both interesting but also generic, in which you can't even tell what the overall atmosphere and tone is going to be. It looks like a parody of a show that you would see within another show. Like you'd be watching an episode of like Gravity Falls or something, and this would be their parody of some sort of high fantasy anime show or something.
Yeah, I see that. I completely agree with that.
Yeah, and again, not entirely fair, but it's too early to tell. But like I said, they really should have held off until they had more to show than what they showed. And again, they were a little too eager to pat themselves on the back for being diverse, and I'm saying this line because I probably will never actually get to say it, but I don't care if the creator sexually identifies as an Apache attack helicopter. If they're telling a good story, I will follow the story. That's the only way to put it. I don't care if you identify as an Apache attack helicopter. If you're a good writer, we'll read your work.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. I
love that.
Yeah, I mean, there's no other way to say it, because that's something that people always struggle with. It's like, oh, but it's diverse. Like, well, are they good writers? The people they've announced in the crew, they don't have any credits under their belt. So what vote of confidence can we give that they even know what they're doing? Because that is also a common issue. It's the same problem when I did a review of Lucy, where people are like, oh, but it's an action film starring a female lead. And it's like, yeah, but just because it stars a female lead doesn't mean it's good. That's the same problem we ran into with Salt with Angelina Jolie. Just because it's diverse doesn't mean it's good. You actually have to try.
Yeah, and I mean, if we are gonna like get a little political here, because I kind of want to like add on to what you're saying, Romney. Like, great, it's diverse. I love diversity. I am all for diversity. I will completely happy with that. I applaud you, Elation. However, if the writing is bad, or it's if the show is just like very, very, very boring, like, fantastic. You wrote you have a diverse team of boring people. Congratulations. Like, slow clap for you. Focus more on bringing us a trailer with something of substance instead of bragging about how diverse you are, because that obviously got you all in trouble and nobody gives a shit.
Yeah, and Adam who's joining us in the chat, probably because he's taking a break from the Battle of Diaper Hill, has brought in a very good point of, where he says that he is worried that the show will preach about how, as a man, men are evil, which is also a problem we see in certain shows that have come out in this era. I know it was specifically a problem with the Powerpuff Girls reboot for a while, and that is also a problem. And that's kind of an issue with shows that try to be diverse, is that they kind of try to assume, oh, well, we have to send a message and teach people how to be role models, when really it's a case of just tell a good story with relatable characters. I mean, I may feel weird for saying this, but honestly, the show that actually does this right is My Little Pony: Friendship is Magic. Yes, I know it sounds weird hearing a 26-year-old man say this, but...
Oh, please. There are people who are like 3 times your age who watch that show, so don't ruin it.
Yeah, true, but speaking as someone who also has a niece who is really into the show, it does that sort of thing right, where it doesn't try to be preachy or try to change the world. It's just a case of, no, let's create this cast of believable, engaging characters and just tell engaging stories. Do they always succeed? Not necessarily, but it's also a case where Some episodes, they do a really good job, and not because of, oh, it's an homage to Dragon Ball Z, or oh, it's an homage to Batman, but rather a case of, oh no, it actually takes this aspect of friendship and actually explores it thoroughly. And so that show is a good example of just taking a cast of characters and just telling good stories. That's all you really need to do. You can leave if the politics add to the subtext, go ahead and add it, but don't force it if it's not needed.
That was beautifully stated. Like, I know obviously nobody, like, people who are live watching this are going to see me applauding. So those who are just listening, like, after this has been recorded, I'm applauding Romney right now because you can't physically see me doing it.
Yeah, because that's honestly the best example. My Little Pony Friendship is Magic just does it right. I'll make a t-shirt of that and wear it if I have to.
I just imagined it. Oh, I'm losing it. Anyway.
Yes.
We also need a t-shirt that's just like a pile of diapers and then hashtag diaper hill, because I totally just like hashtag friendship. I'll add it in a post. I'm like chatting with Adam in the chat right now as we're all talking about
the
this.
t-shirt needs to have like a picture of Adam standing atop with like a flag on Diaper Hill.
We need to get these t-shirts going. I want to wear the one where I created No Pants Warrior. Or Sassy Senorita.
Or Raging Bat Boner.
I thought I was... Actually, I'm still proud of that one. It's the All-American Boner that I'm not entirely sure I like, but oh well.
And again, that just has a weird mashup in my head, because the day you made that joke, I'd finished listening to the Book of Mormon CD, and there's a certain song, their song All-American Prophet comes to mind, but you can probably guess what's been replaced.
Oh my gosh. Okay, is there anything else we can say about this High Guardian Spice before we start talking about my genitals?
Honestly, probably not much else. I'm guessing Crunchyroll decided to accidentally eat all of the wasabi and then gave a press statement when really they needed to pace themselves. Just because you're excited, you don't want to reveal it too early, because again, that's what Square Enix did with the Final Fantasy VII remake, and look where that got them.
Oh yeah, and that's something we could talk about literally for an hour, which we just don't have time for.
Yeah,
indeed.
Just like you said, they got a little too ahead of themselves. You're not launching a Kickstarter, you're launching a product that you're expecting to have complete, published, ready whenever you have expected to be completed and ready. So you don't need to sell us the pitch, you just need to sell us the premise from a good preview and a good synopsis.
Indeed.
Yeah, indeed. So we'll see what 2019 brings us. I mean, that obviously is just vague in itself because it's not like a specific pinpoint date and month in the year. It's just sometime between January 1st and December 31st, this television show will premiere on Crunchyroll, the end. And this is like the stills and our diverse commentary that we're giving you.
Yes. And honestly, who knows where this will go? Will it be a surprise hit, or will it go the way of Ghostbusters 2016? Too early to tell. But speaking of controversy in the animation industry, we now go back across the pond. Well, I guess we're going across in the opposite direction, as we now bring our attention to a development in the anime industry in Japan. This story comes to us from Anime News Network, and it follows the director Yutaka Yamamoto, who goes by the handle of Yamakon, who is best known for work on anime such as Wake Up Girls and Kanagi, who's been known for his unapologetic, and I have no idea how to pronounce that word, for his unapologetic and abrasive, I'll use that word, behavior.
Yeah, that's a good, and keep going, sorry.
Yes, and so known for his unapologetic and abrasive presence online, he's run afoul of the Twitter Gestapo, as both his personal Twitter account and that of his studio have been suspended. Now, there's a lot of speculation over what led to said suspension. I can't talk tonight, apparently. But apparently, as the director posted on his official blog on Tuesday, he has one theory as to why his Twitter accounts were suspended. On the blog, he said that he was not surprised because he was familiar with Twitter's recent absurdity, more than likely in reference to the number of bans and suspensions that we have seen on the platform. And so looking at it, he basically says he's received a message from Twitter about at least one of his posts, and the message, which he posted to his blog, stated that his account has been suspended for violating Twitter's rules against abusive, threatening, and discriminatory behavior. Now, looking at this, it says that it's referring to an image posted on his blog, but it's apparently part of many inflammatory comments regarding how he engaged fans. One of said incidents involved a tweet from Monday in which the director criticized Koji Saito, the producer of the Animello Summer Live Anime Music Festival, in the tweet, and basically criticizing that calling him a true idiot that has had a negative influence on the festival itself, and then also included a link to another fan's tweet that mentioned a dispute between Yamacon and the people running said event. Now, it's hard to really gauge what the tweets actually say because the article itself doesn't actually have the tweets nested, because when the account is suspended, those tend to go into the ether. So it's hard to really say for certain what he said or why he was banned specifically. And it's also hard to say whether the tweets were even in, well, they likely were in Japanese. So there's a lot that we don't know at this point, but it raises the question of why is Twitter now suddenly caring about what people are saying on its platform, despite the track record of not previously caring. That's kind of my only major takeaway of, okay, what did this guy do that got Twitter to get worried?
Yeah, it's Yamamoto, it's Yamakon, so it could kind of go either way. He's pretty known for voicing his opinion, very vocally, kind of pretty brash. I think he's looking to eventually replace Miyazaki as the old anime curmudgeon who has to complain about everything. And so I don't know, obviously, I don't know if I never followed him, so I don't know if his tweets were overly harsh and that Twitter felt the need to take sweeping action, or if it is just the overcorrection Twitter's having to do because they're getting so much heat because of recent events and so on and so forth. So I can see it go either way.
Yeah, especially considering that he, according to some of the tweets that are documented, he's gone so far as to blame otaku and even China for some of his problems, such as the cancellation of an anime he was working on, such as New Life Plus, among other projects. And so it looks like he's trying to be both Miyazaki, but then also took a few pages from Hideki Kamiya.
Yeah, man's just ever since he got fired from KyoAni, he's just never been the same. He's just, or maybe he was always this crazy, and his firing just amplified his emotions way worse. But I don't know. But I know is after he got fired. Yeah, after he got fired from Lucky Star is when he started going off the rails.
Yeah, that would definitely explain why someone, I mean, for all we know, that could be why he's probably, either he felt himself free to do what he wanted, which is probably why he started his own studio, but it's hard to say. I mean, one thing that's safe to say in business, you got to be careful what you say, because if you say it to the wrong person, you could very much torpedo your company and not even realize it.
Yeah, and right now he's not doing himself any favors. I don't know if it was canceled, because this might be the first I'm hearing about it. I thought he had another work on the near horizon with his new studio, but that could have been the one you just mentioned that got canceled. So
yeah, this one was back in June when it happened, and basically that was when the anime Young Again in Another World got specifically canceled with the, again, it's weird. I can understand trying to blame otaku, but how does China factor into this? That is my question.
That's just if I have to go down the crazy thought train, I suppose just because the Chinese market isn't interested in this, and that's all the producers are catering to, and well, China is becoming not only the big market for Hollywood, anime is certainly getting there now as well.
Yep, and looking at it, you're not that far off. Looking at the article that reported that cancellation, it says, honestly, I have some resentment against Chinese people. And then he basically got in an argument with a Chinese extremist and ended up being banned from entering China. And it's but at the same time, there are a lot of people from China who understand. And so, yeah, this guy, I mean, it's very much, someone needs to have him talk to Aaron Burr and just basically if you want to get ahead, those fools who run their mouths often wind up dead.
Yeah, and at this point, I can't imagine anyone wants to work for him, and he's probably burning more bridges than he's making. I'll be amazed to see if he'll get something off the ground in the next few years or not.
I mean, unless they decide to do the whole, oh, he's going to go on tour throughout the country like Charlie Sheen did after his meltdown. Which, again, that was a weird time in history where you basically paid money to watch Charlie Sheen rant, and then partway through the tour, he realized that he just quit the most successful sitcom and was talking about begging for his job back, which is probably what we're going to get here at some point.
Wouldn't surprise me.
Yep. Well, that's Twitter for you. I think that just goes to show there probably should be like some sort of like maturity test before you're allowed to use Twitter. Just some sort of case of, okay, are you able to control your anger for more than 3 seconds?
Yeah, I think we really need to implement that for all Twitter users because so many people. I mean, there was a story fairly recently of a woman who just got hired for NASA. She, said something, and Homer Hickam, author of October Sky, just tried to kindly reply, say, please watch your language. And she's like, said something abrasive back to him. And, well, there goes her job at NASA.
Yeah. There's another t-shirt. It's like, well, there goes your job at NASA. Send it to anybody who basically loses their job over Twitter. You just send them that t-shirt that says, well, there goes your job at NASA.
Watch what you say online, guys. Go ahead, Brendan.
No, I was going to say, I really like what you're saying here, Alex, because this is something that I have actually tried to more recently than ever. I try very, very hard to watch what I say in like my commentary in my videos, and even when I am on the podcast, just because I know that in the future there are going to be employers who are going to look me up. And I mean, my name is virtually like in a lot of different places. And so I want to be able to show that I can be relatively a professional outside and inside the workplace. And so, I mean, that's why you don't hear me talk about my genitals all that much anymore, because I don't want like a future employer to just by chance pull up the episode where we reviewed Batman versus Superman, and I talk about how my nether regions had a great movement when Ben Affleck was cast as Batman. Like, and apparently this episode now too, because I just had to re-say everything I said from like a couple years ago. But essentially it just sounds like this guy is just causing himself too much trouble because he's just super hot-headed. That's pretty much what I'm getting from this.
Yeah, and he's so burned out. I don't know why he's still trying to work in this business. He got fired from Kyoto Animation, tried his own things. I know maybe more of the problems also kind of begin because he did Fractal, which had to unfortunately go up right against Monica Magica when that became a smash success. So that also kind of just only added gasoline to his already raging fires.
Indeed. And I remember that show. That show was weird. Like, really, really weird. It's like it tried to have, it like thought it had a point, but then it forgot to actually have a point. The reason I remember that is because that was back when I would follow the simulcasts. So I watched that series as it came out, and I was confused by the end of it. I literally, after sitting through the whole thing, I'm just like, what the hell just happened?
I should try that sometime. I've never seen it.
It's okay. Like, it has some good ideas, but then it just kind of writes itself into a corner. It's kind of like Ava, except it thinks it's even more self-important.
Oh, wow. That should be interesting.
Yeah. I mean, it's not as squicky as parts of Ava, but it's very much a case where it's a very high concept, very interesting ideas, but then it tries to pull a random, weird philosophical twist out of nowhere, much to just confusion of anyone watching, which was a real shame because it had a really good setup, but then they did nothing with it. Not even any of the twists were that good. And speaking of twists, let's move on to the final story for this evening, which is probably the most baffling thing I had to read about this week as we were gathering stories for this week. It's It's at least a higher note because although we went from one person who was angrily grumbling about the anime industry, here we have another person angrily grumbling, but in good fun. He's not being malicious, it's not being nasty, it's just a case of done for the sake of comedy, and obviously not meaning any ill will. Now, may have mentioned a certain Conan O'Brien on this show in the past, particularly regarding the whole issue regarding the various talk show debacles, such as when Jimmy Kimmel got engaged in a feud with YouTube, which was also a weird point in our history. But unfortunately for Conan O'Brien, he found out that he is not the most famous Conan in the world. Unfortunately, that title belongs to one Detective Conan Edogawa from the Detective Conan series. And, well, Conan wasn't too happy about that, and so he basically said that he would let the problem go away to the tune of 3 trillion yen, which translates to $27 billion in royalties in US currency, and demanding this amount from the creator of Detective Conan, Gosho Aoyama. Now, from the looks of this is basically just a running gag on his show. I haven't actually seen the videos, but it's weird knowing that an American talk show host, is openly talking about anime. So that's always something that throws my brain for a loop.
Yeah, it is pretty strange. He has this, I guess he still does. I haven't watched the show in a while, but he has this segment where he will go try and play video games, even though he doesn't really play video games. So the fact that he's aware
of those segments.
Yeah. So the fact that he's become aware of Detective Conan is nothing short of amazing.
Indeed, and especially given that it's clear that it's all in good fun. He's not actually demanding 3 trillion yen, because no country is going to give $27 billion for something like that. But it's a case where, okay, it's kind of a fun thing, and most recently he did visit the hometown of the manga's creator. It was specifically... Okay, so it looks like he's announced his plan, so he hasn't gone yet, but he's planning on doing a show in the Conan town, which is a city called Hokue in Tottori Prefecture, which is where the creator of Detective Conan resides, and has since more or less become kind of a tourist destination for fans of the manga, with a lot of themed stores and attractions. Now, I'm not too familiar with the Detective Conan series, but from what I've heard, it is pretty popular. It's kind of up there with Lupin the Third in terms of ubiquity, at the very least.
It's been on the air for probably almost 30 years now.
It's been in production, like the actual manga, since 1994, and currently is currently in 94 volumes.
Yeah, and the anime's been running since 1996, over 900 episodes and counting.
I want to see how does this compare to One Piece, because that's the only other
well, it's older than One Piece, or about as old as One Piece, I think.
Oh my gosh, it's older than One Piece. One Piece started in 97 and is about 89 printed volumes. But I mean, of course, that doesn't count those written published chapters that have yet to be serialized in a manga, which I'm not sure how many of those are. But anyway, yeah, it's older, and it's been running longer than One Piece.
Yeah, so far the only manga that it'll probably never beat, given the way at this rate. The only other manga that I know that's been running longer has been JoJo, but that's because that's been going on since the 80s, and the manga that was the longest running manga series ended a couple of years ago, so it makes you wonder what would happen if Conan discovers JoJo. That would be another weird thing. I don't think the world is ready for a JoJo-obsessed Conan.
I would like to see that. That'd be interesting.
Indeed, unless this becomes a thing where apparently talk show hosts start feuds over various anime series. So we've got Conan O'Brien with Detective Conan. Makes you wonder, okay, well, what anime would Jimmy Fallon take umbrage with? Honestly, I'm not sure. Then again, I don't really watch Jimmy Fallon or Jimmy Kimmel, so this was a train of thought I was not prepared for, and it goes nowhere. Woo! Yeah, I mean, it's silly, but at least it's a good kind of silly. It's not like a silly where, oh, we're watching people being stupid because they're being angry. It's a case of, okay, it's a nice little nod that, oh, hey, anime is getting a little bit more mainstream attention, even though Detective Conan hasn't quite found its foothold here in the States because of various factors. So it's nice to see that at least there's at least something to make us laugh after the downer of a week we've had.
Yeah, nice little thing. Now, when I saw it, I kind of figured, oh, he's probably going to be prepping for like a Japan trip because he's done those episodes abroad, and I think that's nice. He's actually going to make a trip to Japan, go see the hometown of the mangaka, and yeah, that's going to be fun.
Yep, and apparently this gets even better because according to the clip where he announced the trip, he actually did get a response from the mayor of Hokue, Akio Matsumoto, who basically said that he will give the 3 trillion yen sum if he gives the sum, he'll give the sum if he fulfills his requests. The main request being to put the mayor, Akio Matsumoto, on Mount Rushmore, gives him his own Walk of Fame, and brings 15,000 hamburgers with him. So
that would be amazing.
Well, I mean, I can see the hamburgers, and I can see the Walk of Fame, but that brings the question, like, what's going to count? Is a mock-up of Mount Rushmore going to be enough, or is he going to have to actually bring in the dynamite and go to the mountain himself? Still better. Yep, still better than Jimmy Kimmel's feud with YouTube Gaming.
Yeah.
No, this is definitely like super cute. I think this is fun. Conan does a lot of fun things, and it's like you all said, it's not in any sort of like malice or an attempt to obtain money that, frankly, he probably doesn't even really need. He is just Conan being Conan and having fun.
Indeed. Sadly, the only thing that I remember of watching anything Conan related was when Andy Richter tried having his own sitcom. It was okay, but didn't last very long for obvious reasons. I mean, it was weird having the Conan guest starring episode in Andy Richter Controls the Universe, where he basically played a crazy person who jumped out of a plane with a parachute and then hid out in the Bahamas with a dog who he thought spoke Italian.
Okay.
This was a real thing. I used to watch sitcoms. The ones that were bad did some weird stuff. And speaking of weird stuff, the weirdest thing is that we have actually run through all of our stories for the evening. Since other than that, it was a moderately slow week, not a lot in terms of announcements, and not a lot that was in the wheelhouse of gaming and entertainment as far as we were able to uncover. So we're going to have to go ahead and call this an early night since we are literally out of time. Well, not out of time. We are literally out of content. And so we will go ahead and go around. If people want to get a hold of the various panelists here, whether they agree or disagree with their opinions about High Guardian Spice or whether or not Conan should get his 37 or his 3 trillion yen, it's hard to do numbers. Brinton, where can they get a hold of you?
They can reach me on Twitter at bvalli01, and that is the letter B, VALLI01. And I am also here on YouTube as BPV Gaming, where I do Triad Let's Plays. There is a video on my channel that goes over what Triad Let's Plays are, and I am also doing once I actually sit down to start recording it again, a ongoing series of Final Fantasy XIV, however long that will be.
All right, and Alex, where can people get a hold of you if they want to get on your case about your opinions of Yamakan's conduct on Twitter?
Well, you can find me on YouTube. Shadow Blizzard 3000 is my channel, and I do anime-related content and occasional Let's Plays. And if you want to always be up to date of when a new video goes up, follow me on Twitter at AlexJShort.
All right, and if people want to get a hold of me directly, you can find me under my handle, Studio Ghost. That is my handle both on YouTube and on Facebook, so Studio Ghost Utah is my full handle. I'm not doing words well tonight, apparently.
Clearly not.
Indeed. So my handle is Studio Ghost Utah. I am also on Twitter at Romney Reviews, and it is probably the best way to get a hold of me or send any suggestions to me directly. Seriously, people, Adam's got another kid he's taking care of. Let's give the guy a break. We won't bite. You can contact us all directly. And so those are the ways you can get a hold of me. And since I am hosting tonight, I don't actually have a Romney's recommendation for this week because, well, cobbling together an agenda actually takes a fair bit of time. But if you want to get a hold of the show directly, we have our email, geekyweek@gmail.com. If you want to listen to us on the go, you can find us on Podomatic at geekyweek.podomatic.com. You can also find us on iTunes and on Google Podcasts. So that way, if you want to get your weekly dose of geek on your morning commute or evening commute, we don't judge. Some of you are night workers. You can get us. You can hear our lovely, lovely voices that way. And if you want to get a hold of the show directly, in addition to the email, we are also on Twitter at GeekyNRO. And we also have a Facebook page, which you simply find Geek News Reviews and Opinions on Facebook and like it. And you'll be kept up to date of when we go live, who is hosting, and what kind of stories we plan on talking about. So that is how you can get a hold of the show directly. And we've all discussed how you can get a hold of us directly. Seriously, give Adam a break. So that is going to be it for tonight. Thank you for tuning in to Geek News Reviews and Opinions. So for me, for Brinton, and for Alex, we bid you all good night.